I used to think beauty was the finish line. If someone looked perfect, flawless skin, attention everywhere, men orbiting like satellites, I assumed life was easier for them. I envied it. I even chased it. But here's what nobody tells you. The more beautiful she was, the more miserable she seemed. I don't say that with judgment. I say it with shock. Behind every perfect Instagram smile was exhaustion, panic, and the quiet fear of fading. The first time I saw it up close, it broke something in me. I realized beauty doesn't protect you. It traps you. It makes validation a drug, and peace almost impossible. In this video, I'm exposing the hidden psychology behind that trap, why attraction creates emptiness, why attention kills peace, and what the rest of us can actually learn from it. Number 1. The illusion of beauty. Happiness. For most of my life, I believed beautiful people were automatically happier. It wasn't even something I questioned. It just felt obvious. If you walk into a room and every head turns toward you, how could you not feel good about yourself? Then, I actually started getting close to those people, dating them, working with them, seeing behind the filters and flawless exteriors, and what I found was disturbing. The most physically blessed people were often the most anxious, the most insecure, and the least content. It made no sense at first. One woman I knew had men chasing her constantly. Compliments, attention, gifts. She had all of it. But every night she'd scroll through her phone in silence, comparing herself to women she'd never meet. She wasn't competing with other people. She was competing with an image of herself that no longer existed. That's when I realized beauty is the biggest illusion of happiness. It gives you access to admiration, but not to fulfillment. It opens every door, but none of them lead where you think they do. The truth is, external beauty multiplies everything you already are. If you're insecure, it amplifies the insecurity. If you're lost, it magnifies the emptiness. Beauty doesn't create peace, it just raises the stakes of losing it. And yet most of us still chase it, thinking it's the cure, when it's often the beginning of the disease. Number 2, the dopamine high of attention. Attention feels like love until you realize it's just chemistry. I remember dating someone who couldn't go an hour without checking her phone. Every notification, every like, every message lit her up for a second. And then I'd watch her mood crash the moment the screen went quiet. It wasn't about vanity, it was about dopamine. That quick hit of digital applause had become her emotional oxygen. At first, I mistook it for confidence. I thought, she's just social, she's admired. But it wasn't confidence, it was dependency. Every compliment reinforced the craving for more, and the absence of attention felt like withdrawal. I started seeing the pattern everywhere. The more attention someone receives, the less it satisfies. What used to feel special becomes normal, and what's normal becomes boring. So they raise the dosage. New selfies, bolder captions, riskier behavior, anything to feel that little spark again. It's not just women, it's all of us. We confuse dopamine with connection. We mistake stimulation for fulfillment. Here's the paradox. When you rely on attention for happiness, you lose control of your own emotions. Your self-worth becomes a public stock price that rises and falls based on strangers' reactions. And the scariest part? The moment you stop feeding that loop, everything feels empty. Not because life got worse, but because the noise stopped. The takeaway is simple but brutal. Attention is the fastest way to feel alive, and the quickest way to kill your peace. Number 3, identity built on appearance. I once knew a woman who built her entire life around how she looked. Every compliment was oxygen, every glance a silent approval stamp. She was effortlessly magnetic, but underneath the surface, her identity was fragile. It existed only when someone else was watching. The mirror wasn't glass to her, it was a scoreboard. At first I admired her confidence. She moved through the world as if she belonged to the spotlight. But I noticed something subtle. Whenever the spotlight dimmed, so did she. A quiet panic would take over. She'd scroll, compare, adjust, perform again. It wasn't vanity, it was survival. Without attention, she didn't know who she was. That's the tragedy of beauty-based identity. It feels like power, but it's dependency disguised as confidence. You're not admired for who you are, only for how well you maintain the illusion. And illusions, by nature, require constant upkeep. I watched her try to reinvent herself. New hair, new clothes, new crowd, chasing the same high she once got effortlessly. But every transformation made her more lost. When beauty becomes your identity, aging feels like erasure. The world moves on, and you're left wondering if you ever truly existed beyond your reflection. It took years before she realized the truth. Being seen isn't the same as being known, and once she started focusing on character instead of image, the mirror finally stopped being an enemy. Number 4. The social mirror: how culture markets never-ending youth. Every generation inherits a new version of the same lie, that youth is the peak of worth. The packaging just changes. Now it's filters, fillers, and anti-aging serums disguised as self-care. The message is constant: stay young or become invisible. I used to think people bought these products to look good, but that's not it. They buy them to stay relevant, to prove to the world and to themselves that time hasn't won yet. I remember watching someone scroll through her feed, pausing on a girl half her age. She sighed and whispered, "I used to look like that." It wasn't envy, it was grief. A quiet mourning for a self the world once applauded. That's what the culture sells. Not youth, but the illusion of emotional safety. The promise that if you can still look 25, you'll still feel wanted. But the problem with chasing eternal youth is that it never ends. The finish line keeps moving, and the satisfaction window shrinks with every new product, every new face, every new reminder that you're aging. What most people don't realize is how intentional this system is. Entire industries profit from keeping you insecure, because insecurity keeps you buying. It's a cruel cycle. The more the world tells you to stay young, the older you feel inside. And somewhere along the way, you stop living for experiences and start living for evidence. Proof that you're still desirable, still admired, still visible. The truth is, the mirror stopped being an object long ago. It became a marketplace. And the reflection it shows isn't who you are, it's what you've been sold to believe. Number 5. The aging panic and cultural betrayal. There's a quiet terror that creeps in when someone realizes youth is slipping away. It's not just about wrinkles or grey hair, it's about relevance, identity, and power. I've seen it hit people like a slow heartbreak. One day they're effortlessly admired, the next day, invisible. Not because they changed overnight, but because the world decided to stop looking. That's the betrayal no one prepares you for. Society builds women up on the pedestal of youth, then punishes them for falling off it. The same culture that once praised their beauty now mocks them for trying to preserve it. It's a double bind. Age naturally and you're letting yourself go. Fight aging and you're desperate. Either way you lose. I once watched a friend spiral through that panic. The gym became her confession booth, the clinic her therapist's office. She didn't want to be younger, she wanted to feel safe again. But safety built on admiration is temporary. Every compliment expired the moment it was spoken. The more she tried to hold on, the faster it slipped away. And beneath the panic was something deeper: grief. Grief for how much of her life she spent performing for approval. Grief for realizing the validation she chased never belonged to her. It was rented, conditional, revocable. Aging isn't the tragedy. The tragedy is realizing you were never taught how to exist beyond being looked at. The real crisis isn't losing beauty. It's discovering how little you were valued without it. Number 6. The comparison spiral. Comparison is the quiet poison of modern life. It doesn't kill you outright. It drains you slowly, thought by thought, scroll by scroll. I once sat across from someone who couldn't stop checking her phone during dinner. Every pause in conversation sent her back into that glowing little screen. I asked what she was looking at and she laughed. Just other people's lives. But the laugh didn't sound like humour. It sounded like exhaustion. That's the thing about comparison. It never ends in satisfaction. There's always someone younger, slimmer, richer, more admired. The algorithm knows it too. It feeds you what keeps you scrolling. People who make you feel almost enough but not quite. That's the addiction. Chasing the feeling that you could be happy if you just had one more thing. What makes it so cruel is that comparison isn't based on truth. It's based on illusion. You're comparing your behind-the-scenes chaos to someone else's highlight reel. Your real skin to their filters, your late nights to their staged mornings. You're losing a battle against fiction. I've learned that envy doesn't mean you want what someone else has. It means you've forgotten what you already have. The people who seem the happiest online are often the loneliest offline. They don't post joy, they post proof. Proof that they still matter. Proof that they still look good enough to be noticed. The spiral only ends when you stop measuring your worth by someone else's reflection. Because the truth is, peace begins the moment comparison ends, and most people never reach that moment. Number 7, when love becomes background noise. It's strange how love can fade, not because it disappears, but because it becomes familiar. I've seen people walk away from perfectly good relationships, not out of anger or betrayal, but out of boredom. They mistake peace for emptiness and stability for stagnation. One woman once told me, "He's kind, he's loyal, but I just don't feel alive anymore." She didn't realize what she was describing wasn't the absence of love, it was the absence of chaos. When you've spent years being fueled by attention, the steady warmth of real love feels dull compared to the adrenaline of being desired. Validation gives you a high, love gives you grounding. But if you've built your identity around being chased, grounding feels like a trap. The problem isn't that love stopped being exciting, it's that excitement became the benchmark for love. I watched her chase that feeling, new clothes, new attention, new men, believing it would make her feel young again. It didn't. Every high faded faster than the last, and every time she came down, the silence grew louder. The truth she didn't want to face was that peace feels uncomfortable when you're addicted to intensity. Love isn't meant to feel like fireworks forever. It's meant to feel like a quiet home you can return to after the fireworks fade. But we've taught people to crave sparks instead of warmth, beginnings instead of bonds, and that's why so many lose something real, because they can't tell the difference between passion and peace. Number 8. The search for meaning beneath the mask. At some point, the applause stops. The compliments slow down, the attention shifts, and the identity you've worn for years begins to crumble. That's when the quiet starts. The kind of quiet that terrifies people who've never met themselves outside of validation. I've seen that silence break people. Without the noise of approval, they're forced to face a haunting question. Who am I if no one's watching? For years, she built her worth through admiration. The makeup, the smiles, the perfectly curated life. But beneath all of it was a deep exhaustion. Every time she performed, she felt a little less alive. Every time she pretended, she lost a little more of who she really was. When the mask finally cracked, she didn't know how to live without it. That's the hidden cost of external worth. It gives you identity without self. It rewards the performance but ignores the person, and when the performance ends, so does the sense of meaning. But that's also where something extraordinary can begin. Because beneath the fear, beneath the pretending, there's something real. A version of you that doesn't need applause, filters, or proof. It's raw, unpolished, but it's yours. Meaning doesn't come from being seen, it comes from being known, mostly by yourself. The day she stopped trying to be someone, she started becoming herself. That's when she discovered the kind of happiness that doesn't fade when the spotlight does. Number 9. The truth about validation and love. We all say we want love, but most of us are chasing validation. The difference is simple. Love gives, validation takes. Love sees you for who you are. Validation sees you for what you can provide. One nourishes the soul, the other feeds the ego. I learned that the hard way, trying to earn affection instead of receiving it. I remember a moment when someone told me they loved me, and instead of feeling peace, I felt relief. That's when I realized I wasn't in love. I was addicted to approval. Their affection wasn't a connection. It was confirmation that I was still enough. That kind of dependency isn't romantic, it's imprisonment. Validation is like sugar, instant sweetness, followed by a crash. Real love, on the other hand, is like water, subtle, necessary, and often overlooked until it's gone. But most people are dehydrated and chasing sugar. They want to feel adored without the effort of being known. What I've learned is this. You can't receive real love until you stop auditioning for it. When your sense of worth depends on being chosen, you lose the ability to choose yourself. And when you stop performing, when you stop needing to be impressive, you finally become lovable for the right reasons. Validation asks, am I enough? Love says, you already are. The moment you understand that difference, you stop chasing attention and start attracting peace. Number 10. Reclaiming happiness, the shift from seen to known. There's a moment when you finally get tired, not physically but emotionally, of constantly needing to be seen. You wake up one morning and realize you've spent years performing for an audience that doesn't even care. That's when the real shift begins. You stop asking, "How do I look?" and start asking, "How do I feel?" It sounds simple, but that single question changes everything. The journey from being seen to being known is uncomfortable because it requires honesty, not image. You can't filter your way into authenticity. You have to strip everything away, the validation, the perfection, the persona, until what's left feels raw, but real. It's terrifying at first because you've spent so long earning approval that genuine self-acceptance feels unnatural. But once you experience it, there's no going back. I've seen people transform completely once they stopped performing. They began to build lives around depth instead of display, careers fueled by purpose, relationships rooted in truth, confidence that didn't need an audience. They realized happiness wasn't about being admired, it was about being understood. When you're finally known, not for your image, but for your essence, the world becomes quieter, simpler, freer. You don't chase attention anymore because you've replaced validation with peace. The irony is that's when people start noticing you again, not because you're trying to be seen, but because authenticity radiates louder than beauty ever could. Number 11. The liberation of self-worth. True liberation doesn't come from becoming more desirable. It comes from becoming untouchable, not in arrogance, but in inner solidity. When your worth no longer swings with other people's opinions, you reclaim the freedom you never realized you'd lost. That's the kind of strength no surgery, no compliment, no amount of attention can replicate. I once watched someone rebuild herself from nothing after losing everything she thought defined her: youth, beauty, admiration. She said, "For the first time, I'm not scared of fading. I'm scared of never living." That line stayed with me because it revealed the truth most people never face. We don't fear aging, we fear irrelevance. But the only people who become irrelevant are the ones who built their entire existence around being noticed. When you finally understand that, you stop fighting time and start flowing with it. You find worth in your thoughts, your presence, your stillness. You realize your value was never meant to be decorative, it was meant to be definitive. Liberation is realizing that you are never competing with youth, beauty, or anyone else. You are always competing with the version of you that believed you had to earn love to deserve peace. Once that illusion dies, so does the need for performance. The happiest people aren't the ones still admired by everyone, they're the ones who no longer need to be. Because when self-worth becomes internal, no one can take it away again. Here's the truth that most people never want to admit. Happiness doesn't come from being adored. It comes from being at peace with yourself when no one's watching. Every compliment, every like, every passing glance fades. What stays is the relationship you have with the person in the mirror when the makeup's gone, the lights are off, and the world's gone quiet. If you've spent years chasing validation, I get it. We all have. It's easy to build your worth around how others respond to you. It feels safe, measurable, predictable. But one day you'll realize that all the noise you chased was just distraction. The real work is in silence. The real confidence is invisible. And the real transformation doesn't happen when you become more desirable. It happens when you become unshakable. 5 years from now, you could still be stuck in the same exhausting loop. Posting, performing, pretending. Or you could wake up in a life built on something deeper. A life where your peace doesn't depend on opinions, your happiness doesn't depend on youth, and your worth doesn't expire with time. That choice starts now. The path to peace isn't glamorous, but it's powerful. It means trading attention for authenticity, comparison for contentment, performance for presence. And once you make that shift, the world doesn't lose its color. It just stops defining your reflection. So the question is simple. Do you want to keep chasing admiration that fades by morning? Or do you want to build a life that feels good in the dark? Leave your answer below, not for validation, but for honesty. Because that's where change begins. Your choice, your life. Start now.